Hello everyone, my name is Josh and welcome to Whims. And today I'm going to be doing a review. Welcome to my first video for October. And I'm going to be doing something a little bit different than what I usually do. I usually, whenever I go on this channel, I always try to talk about films, TV shows, books in a very positive light. And I always try to review films that I have a genuine interest in reviewing or a very genuine interest in talking about. But to me, I'm actually going to give a little bit of a negative review this time round, and I'm not usually that type of reviewer. I do try to be very positive as positive as possible when reviewing a film. I never try to look at the negatives. But one of the films that I am going to be giving a review on is on Rob Zombie's The Devil's Rejects. And the reason why I wanted to do a review of this film is I actually got very angry when I was watching a video of Roger Ebert's old show, and he basically gave a negative review to the film I Spit on Your Grave. And that's perfectly reasonable, which is fine because, of course, it is very grotesque, it is very nasty, and it is very shocking. But I was rooting for that woman in that film to get her revenge. I was rooting for her to go after those bastards and basically make them pay. And that's what I really kind of thought was very much the drive of that entire film, was that you were doing that. I wouldn't want to see the film again, but during that time I was actually very much on board with the main character. But he said it's very depraved, it's very disgusting, and what the subtitle of the film is The Year of the Woman. And I would have been okay with that. Like, I'm okay with Roger Ebert's reviews, and he even gave a bad review to several films that I love. Blue Velvet, Lost Highway, Mulholland Drive, Wild at Heart, Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me, and Eraserhead. So he's given bad reviews to 7 David Lynch films that I really love, most of David Lynch's films. And he's given a few bad reviews to a couple of other filmmakers that I really love in their films. So yeah, I'm going to swallow my pride and say, oh, it's his opinion, it's perfectly fine. And even one of my favourite critics, Mark Kermode, has given some bad reviews to some films that I love in the past. But when he gave this film a positive review, I literally found myself going, really? Really? This is the film that you're giving a positive review to? And I literally felt like the bride in Kill Bill Volume 2, like when she literally like looks at Bill and she has this sort of like reaction like that, like the one that I just did, where she literally like leans forwards and goes, "That's your explanation, really? You're overreacted." And that's kind of what I feel about Roger Ebert, because Roger Ebert is one of those critics who I do respect since his passing, but I don't think he always got it right. And I think that's one of those things. This is one of those instances where he hasn't got it right. And I feel like that's one of those things where I feel like I almost want to call him a hypocrite, because it does feel like he's almost praising this film, and this film has a lot of the same problems that films like I Spit on Your Grave has, which is that it is very depraved, it is very dark, it is very brutal and very exploitative. But I'm not going to be a prude about it and say, oh, I'm completely dismissing this film because it has all these gory set pieces. But what I really am going to criticise it for is the writing, and I feel like the writing is all bark and no bite, in the sense that it likes to pretend that it's this very kind of witty and very interesting film, but in reality the dialogue feels like something that I would have written as a teenager. Like the line about, him going, Otis going, oh boy, the last thing better come out your mouth better be some fucking Mark Twain shit, because it sure is chiseling on your tombstone. That was me when I was trying to imitate Stephen King's style. That's literally how I was doing it as a teenager, and I found myself going, this is worse than I would have written it. And I've written some pretty shit stuff in my time as a teenager. I wrote some really bad poetry and stuff like that. But this is terrible. And then, of course, there's a lot of other bad bits of dialogue, but part of me feels like, what is this film? What are the people who love it drawn to it for? Why is it so good? And I like to think, and this is what I've been trying to do after wrestling with myself, thinking, what about this is so good? And part of me feels like the sheriff character. So the story of The Devil's Rejects is, you've got the Firefly family, they're being hunted down by the police, the house is surrounded by a SWAT team, and most of them are unanimously gunned down. The mum, who is a total, nymphomaniac, is arrested and confined, and two of the other members, Otis and Baby, played by Bill Moseley and Sherry Moon Zombie, respectively, are taken into custody. Not taken into custody, they do a runner. And there's this very horrific sequence where this woman goes out to see if Sherry Moon Zombie's character's okay. She looks like she's fainted in the road. She looks like she's collapsed and had heat stroke. And Otis comes up behind her, stabs her in the back, kills her, and then drives off with the car. This is going to be a very long video, ladies and gentlemen, because I have a lot of things to say about these characters and how depraved they are and how horrific they are. But yeah, I am going to try to be as calm as possible when talking about this film. But this film is total nothing. This film is like a barren wasteland of all sorts of things that I just feel like... I literally want to ask the big question, why do all the people who like it so much? Because honestly, it doesn't have anything. It has nothing. It has nothing to offer. It's more of the same. First of all, it's more of the same brutality. The scene where, Otis cuts off the father's face from House of Thousand Corpses and wears it as a mask to taunt one of the relatives. He does it again in Devil's Rejects, but this time it's to the lover, and the boyfriend is the one whose face he's wearing. It's the same thing. He cuts and copies the same thing over and over and over again. And it's like, when the person who says... when he's talking about that scene in The Devil's Rejects, and he says, you're not expecting that visual. Of course you are, if you've seen House of Thousand Corpses. That's just logic. So to me, I just feel like all the people who like this film are kind of almost, I'm also thinking to myself, why? Why? Because this film doesn't deserve it. This film doesn't deserve your praise. This film doesn't deserve any of it, because I feel like it's not good. It's not funny, it's not interesting, the characters aren't likeable in the slightest, and I was starving, I was actually hungry for a bit of depth, a bit of characterization, but the only real substantive scenes, if you can even call them substantive, were the scenes with the sheriff. But he was like the lesser of two evils, at least he had a motive. None of these characters did. He was getting revenge on this piece of shit, depraved family for killing his brother. And even his scenes were interesting. He was the Frankenstein's monster of this whole thing. He was the most compelling character. Otis, Sherry Moon Zombie's character, I don't even know her name, but who gives a shit? I don't think anyone else does. If you do, let me know in the comments what her name is. But she, Otis, and Captain Spaulding... they got nothing. There was nothing in their entire scenes together. They have a scene where they eat ice cream and they say more pretentious dialogue. And they have a scene where they're in a brothel, or in a bordello, as they call it in America. But I'm going to call it brothel because it's more classy. But part of me just feels like you only get those two scenes, and then they get kidnapped by these two people called the Unholy Ones. And they get taken back to this, manor house where they get basically brutalised. And I found myself going, good. Give them a taste of their own medicine. Give them a taste of their own medicine. Untie Otis and then shove something up Otis's arse and give him a little taste of what it's like to be raped. Get him a little taste of what it's like to be brutalised. Get, Sherry Moon Zombie's character, do something brutal to her. Give her a little taste. And even he goes, how do you feel what it's like to be defenceless? And I thought, good for you, mate. I want you to kill these bastards. Get them. And it's like, he has the most interesting scenes. The rest of it, it's like the way, Frank Darabont felt about Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. It's the most interesting script I've written, the most awful film I've ever seen. I don't agree with that, because I really like Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. It's one of my favourites, but I feel like that with this. Like, half the film is okay. It's not good. It's not Citizen Kane or Shakespeare levels of good. It's just okay. The rest of the film is total dog shit. And I feel genuinely upset and angry, because I want to see what my good friend Christian and Brad Jones see in this film. But those scenes, I don't care about the Devil's Rejects. I don't care about Otis. I don't care about Sherry Moon Zombie's character. I don't care about Captain Spaulding. I care now because it's he's played by the late great, Sid Haig, and he's passed away recently. But I don't care about them. They're awful. The only interesting character was the sheriff, but his scenes were few and far between. But I guess that's the point. It's meant to say, well, isn't the law enforcement more corrupt and more sadistic than the actual killers? But here's the thing. The killers also do sadistic shit. They do sadistic shit too. Like, what went on in Otis's head to make him think, oh, okay, I'm going to, cut this guy up and then I'm going to make him look like a fishbowl in House of Thousand Corpses? What possessed him to... Because the guy who he tortured did nothing to him. They did nothing to him. Yet he still murders people because he gets annoyed with them somehow. Is it their political beliefs? I wouldn't hurt someone if they had different political beliefs to me. I would actually just want to have a conversation with them. But the whole entire point is they're not civilised. And that's kind of meant to be the point, is you can't reason with uncivilised people. But here's the thing. You have to sit through a ton of it. You have to sit through a ton of nonsense in order to get to those moments. And it's like, that's the epiphany I got. That's the scene... The sheriff is the Frankenstein's monster of this entire film because he at least has motive. He's totally insane, and a lot of people can say, it's the lesser of two evils, but part of me just feels like they're still evil. They're still evil people. And it's like, I don't give a shit about them. And it doesn't matter how many scenes of them eating ice cream or them at Bordello or whatever. How many scenes you put there, I'm not going to give a shit about them because I still remember what they did. I remember what they did to that poor woman, Gloria, what they did to her. I remember what they did to all these other people. I remember everything. And the funny thing about remembering everything is it all gets up here and it all kind of comes back and vomits and does all these other things. I'm just thinking to myself, I don't like this film. But I'm also praising it because half the film is okay. Half the film is okay. Which means half, as in half, 50%, half is okay. I'll give you that, fans of this. I'll give you that. That half this film is okay. The other half is total rubbish because you don't care about the Devil's Rejects. You don't care about Otis. You don't care about any of them. You only start to grow a conscience when they start to get tortured. But that's not what you should do. You should be thinking to yourself, before that happens, you see bits of their humanity. But no, you don't just show scenes of them eating ice cream and expect me to care. You don't. Like, that's kind of the thing with one of my favourite bad guys turned good guys is Jaime Lannister from Game of Thrones. At the start of the season, massive spoilers for Game of Thrones, by the way, but during this season, he's known as the Kingslayer. He's very handsome. He's very kind of, very skilled with a sword. And during the season, he actually pushes a child off a tower. Because the child, Bran Stark, sees something that he shouldn't have seen. He sees him basically engaging in a sex act with his sister, who happens to be the Queen of King's Landing, which is the kingdom, the main kingdom of this entire fantasy world. And if Bran survives and tells about it, it's going to be... Oh, sorry, I just bashed the computer. Apologies for that, guys. But they have to try to decide what they're going to do. So Jaime basically says, keep him calm, just talk to him. Like, what's your name, boy? Bran. And how old are you, Bran? 10. And he has this moment where he looks at him and he goes, 10. And he literally looks at him like the way an uncle would look at his nephew or his niece. Like, he literally has this element of compassion to him where he does genuinely feel like he cares and he's trying to keep the kid calm. But then he does this horrible thing. He goes, the things to do for love, and he pushes him off the tower because he thinks that Cersei told him to do it. And that's kind of back and forth throughout the season, whether he did it because it was forced or whether he did it because he had no choice. But he gets kidnapped by Catelyn Stark, who is the mother of Bran Stark. And she says, when she's talking to him, you don't need to say anything to me. I don't need to justify myself to you. You've forsaken every vow you've ever taken. And he goes, "Oh, every vow I've ever taken, really. Well, they give you a certain list of rules that you need to do when you're a knight, that you need to honour when you're a knight. Excuse me. Trust the king, obey the king, protect the innocent, honour your father, honour your mother. Well, what happens if your mother and father despise the king? What happens when the king asks you to massacre the innocent? Either way, you're forsaking one vow for the other." And that's effectively what he says. And I thought, that's a good point. And then when he is released and he's being taken back, they run into these group of, ruffians or bandits. And they challenge him to a sword fight where he loses his hand. But what's very important is that Jamie loses his sword hand in that battle. And we see a little bit more vulnerability there. We see him, a little bit more as a human. And we see him we see him connect as a human, and we see him at his most vulnerable side, and that encourages him to open up. And that, I thought, was such brilliant characterization, because George R. R. Martin is a far better writer than Rob Zombie is, in my opinion, because he literally cherishes these moments where you get to see these characters' points of view. And in the book, we get entire chapters of Jamie's perspective, and we really get to see what's going on inside his head, how the wheels are working, and why he's been given this name, the Kingslayer, and why he's so frustrated, because he did what he thought was a very honourable thing as a knight, but lots of people were judging him as the Kingslayer. And that, I thought, was really good characterisation, and it's leagues better than anything Rob Zombie would write, in my opinion. He is no George R. R. Martin to me, and I feel like when you see the sheriff scenes, those are the scenes that make me feel like he is touching on something, but it's not good enough. He's not giving me more. He needs to give me more in order to make me care about these other bastards, these murderers, these, depraved individuals. And I feel like the more I'm actually thinking about it, there's more to this than meets the eye, but I feel like I still don't like it. I still think it's rubbish. I still think half the film is good. Not even good, okay. The stuff with the sheriff is actually good, but you could do anything. Any writer, you could train a chimpanzee to write those scenes. You could train a chimpanzee to write the scenes, any of the scenes in this film. You could have hired me as a teenager to write this script, and you pretty much get the same result. This film is not good. It's bad. But at least there are little slithers of an idea. It's just a shame that lots of people who like this film like it, because there is something there. There is something there with the sheriff stuff. I feel like the Frankenstein moment happened with the sheriff. The Frankenstein moment happened with the sheriff when he was struggling with his own morality, coupled with what he actually wants. It's essentially the scene where, Harry Osborn in the third Spider-Man film goes to Harry, "Avenge me." It's like that. It's like that scene. It's Shakespearean. I thought that was very well done. I thought his character was more human than the Devil's Rejects were. And Otis is still a psychopath. I didn't get any development from him. And I felt like I certainly didn't get any development from any of the others. And I felt like the horrible nymphomaniac mother, she deserved to get stabbed to death by the sheriff. Again, far more interesting character. But then again, that sheriff is like Homelander in The Boys. Like his scenes are the only reason why I go to watch The Boys anyway. Like I want to just have a supercut where you see all of Homelander's scenes, because they're the real meat and potatoes of that show. The rest is just dog shit, and it's like, that's kind of a shame, because there is good stuff here. And I feel like the problem with Rob Zombie is he's so focused on shocking you that he forgets that he needs to tell a story. When he gets the story figured out, he can do whatever the hell he wants. But this film is still bad, because he doesn't want you to like the sheriff. He wants you to find him just as depraved. But I found him more interesting. I wanted the whole entire film to be about him. I didn't give a shit about the Devil's Rejects. They could have died 5 seconds earlier and it would have been fine. I would have been okay with that. But I feel like this film is still terrible, and I still hate it, and I still think the people who like it, I still respect you guys. I love you guys. Like, I really do. I really do love Brad Jones. I love Christian. He's one of my friends. I absolutely just really love his opinion. I've respected his opinion for years. But what the hell, guys, with this film? Like, this film doesn't deserve your good word. It really doesn't. The fact that I literally said it's okay is enough of a progression for me. It's enough character development. But I want to hear what you guys think, especially Christian of Canto 1408. Do I feel like I'm on board with that I'm slightly on the same wavelength as you when I say the sheriff scenes are the best scenes in the film? Because I do feel like that's it. It feels like that with me, but except I don't want just the sheriff scenes. I want a whole entire movie to feel like those scenes. I want the whole entire film to be like the monster scenes in Mary Shade's Frankenstein. I want a whole movie that feels like that. I don't just want little bits. I don't just want the Homelander sequences. I want more. I don't want to just have one piece of something. I want to have more than that. And it's like, I want to feel fulfilled when watching this film. I don't want to feel empty and sad and really questioning humanity when I'm watching this film. I don't want to feel that. So I hope that I'm on a very similar wavelength by saying it's okay, but I am going to give it the title I hate it and I'm sorry, because I really do want to, first of all, I want to get your attention, but then at the same time I want to get you guys to review it and to actually talk about it. But so I hope this video has been good. I hope you're all doing very well. This has been Joshua with Whimsical and Interesting Musings. I hope you're all doing very well. Have a good day. Take care. Bye for now. And if you like this video, please be sure to like and subscribe and leave a comment what you think about this film, because I do think it's not as bad as I thought it was. I was prepared to rave and rant, but the more I thought about it, there were things in this that I did think were decent. They weren't perfect, but they were at least getting towards something. And I feel like that's the important thing. But I hope you guys are all having a good day. I hope you're all doing very well. Take care. Bye for now.